Hi, I'm Justin Crosby and welcome to another episode of TellyCast. My guest this week is an old friend of mine and he's just straight in from LA. He's Peter White, Executive Editor from Deadline. How are you doing, Pete?
Hello, mate. I'm good. I was just thinking we're really sort of going back a while because when you first launched this, when it was in just audio form, we were doing this over Zoom in the end of 2020.
That's it.
And we would do sort of 15 minutes from LA just after I'd moved there, and you just started this. So it's nice you've upgraded to sofas. You're looking like Alex Cooper herself.
Yeah. Thanks for that. Yeah. And what I'm really looking forward to catching up. I mean, we're going to go for a beer afterwards. So but this is our first proper chat that we've had for ages. Yeah. And thanks for coming in and having a chat. And you're right. I think, you're going, because you went to LA just before pandemic. You were was it like you were the last flight out of London before lockdown happened, right? To LA?
March 17th, 2020. We were the last flight out of London Heathrow, the day before the day of the Trump travel ban. And stayed there ever since. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Well, we've got loads to talk about. All that change in the last 5 years, which is, the TV industries, some bits are recognisable, some bits not so. Huge changes are happening. So I'm going to start with this question. Is Hollywood burning down right now?
Well, I hope not. I haven't been there for 24 hours and it does have a tendency to burn, but no, I don't think it is. I think there's some challenges, don't get me wrong, and there's some things going on that aren't necessarily making it particularly fruitful for the people who live and work there. But Hollywood's always been cyclical, and people will figure this stuff out. I mean, it depends what you mean by Hollywood as well. There's a literal place. One of the challenges at the moment is production in Hollywood or in or around California. And then there's Hollywood, the sort of greater being of the studios, of which, since we last spoke, there's been some new owners and so forth. So there's still a lot of consolidation going on. But no, it's still a pretty exciting place to live and work.
Yeah. But there's no getting away from the old industry you're right saying it's cyclical, but this feels more fundamental, I think, the changes that we've seen over since the pandemic, and in some cases, accelerated by the pandemic as well. We're seeing obviously streaming come through, and now we're seeing YouTube as being TV, and, the whole structure, cable cutting, the whole structure of the US TV industry is changing, right? And there's always going to be people that are going to profit from that. There's always going to be people that unfortunately may say that their time's over in TV. But I mean, overall, do you sense excitement in LA, in the LA industry, in TV, or is there a certain amount of fear?
Oh, I think there's always fear, but I think you're right. I think there's two types of people who, in the industry, there's the people that everyone sees the change coming. It's those who can adapt and figure it out and figure out the new world, and those who are still holding on to their, 3-part Animal Planet commissions. I think that world is definitely dying, if not dead. But I think a lot of the people who are seeing, as you said, we're living in YouTube's world now. We're living in this world where social media is so important. I think there's a lot of people from the old world that have just adapted to that and are doing exciting new things. The thing about Hollywood is over the last few years, it's sort of been run by dinosaurs, and it's been run by very old people, often old white men. And Hollywood is a young person's game. There's some really exciting things going on. I mean, I don't cover the movie business per se, but you see what happens with Backrooms, this new A24 film. The guy was 18 when he directed it, and it's now on par to be A24's biggest movie ever. So you sort of need to find the youth, and he came out of YouTube. He came out of 4chan. And I think that as long as the industry makes sure to find those types of people, they could still release theatrical movies. They can still make television in a sort of quote-unquote traditional form. But yeah, maybe some of the people who are worried are the people who are worried that that's things have passed them by.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think that has been. I think the leaders of a lot of these corporations have seen the change coming, but maybe it was inconvenient for them to make potentially the change that they might have needed for the good of the company rather than perhaps the good of their own pension pot. Or, it seems like there's very few people in the UK and also in the US that have, they will have known that, the changes were going to happen and the speed that it was happening, but they didn't seem to be able to react, right?
In television, and I sort of understand why. You're absolutely right. You look at what we used to think of as the cable world, which was responsible for the vast, this huge volume of original orders, original series, which allowed producers to make a lot of money. And yeah, if you're still relying on that world, yeah, things are over. If, as I said, if not dead already. But the problem is those businesses still throw off a lot of money, and they still throw off a lot of cash. So I do understand why it's hard for those companies to say, you know what, that's not our business anymore, and we're just going to go digital first. We're just going to go social first. So I sort of see it's an oil tanker, right? It just
Yeah.
it is very slow to turn. I think it's easier for some of the newer companies to be able to do that because they have less baggage, basically, and that's why you get some of the, there's always a hot new company every few years. But when you look at the studio system, yeah, Warner Brothers, Discovery, and Paramount are merging, or David Ellison's buying Warner Brothers. But a lot of that money still comes from some of those cable networks that we hardly ever talk about now. The HGTVs of the world, the Science Channel and Discovery Channel and some of those things. So I get why it can seem scary to those people, but I also know that they really do need to, a lot of the traditional production companies are starting to make YouTube first TV shows, or quote unquote TV shows. So it depends the scale of you are, but
Yeah. So who's thriving right now in LA in the TV business?
I think the people who have figured out how to bring production costs down, that is the number one thing you hear across the board, whether that's from the movie business, from the linear TV business, the streaming business. The problem is, and some of these traditional companies, it costs a lot of money to produce these shows because this is the way they've always done it. If you can find a slightly smarter way to do that, now, a few years ago that was taking your show and making it in Ireland because it was cheaper there, or making your sitcom in Wales even though it's for a US broadcaster. But even that's probably got to come down now because the costs are so high and the viewership is so fragmented that if you aren't able to make a show cheaper than you used to be, yeah, you're dead. You see what these kids can now make online, and they're absolutely wiping the floor with the old people.
Yeah. So you mentioned Paramount and the deal for Warner's, which is, I think it's just, has it been rubber stamped in the US?
No, it hasn't. It's not complete. I mean, it's going to happen any day now, really. We don't quite have a timeline, but yeah, he's sort of got to tick all of the boxes before he's got the full keys to the kingdom.
Yeah. Well, I saw a piece the other day which was talking about EU, and there's a whole load of regulation in the EU that they're going to investigate it as well. So it feels like it's going to rumble on for another year or two.
It'll rumble on. By the time it all finishes, it'll probably be, someone else will try and buy it. It tends to be. But no, it's funny. You mentioned Europe and all of these things. I think David Ellison doesn't really care about the rest of the world.
Yeah.
I think, there's probably a few bits of business elsewhere that, makes a bit of money for him that'll be nice. But he's focused on making 30 movies a year. He's not focused on what's happening on the continent in Europe.
Yeah. So what looking at that merger, and what's going to come out the back end of that? What new company is going to come out back of that? I mean, number one thing, it's there's got to be a huge number of redundancies, I would imagine. It seems to, if there's no merger that happens without 20% at least of staff going. But
and you have to remember, he only just bought Paramount, and he's only still going through some of the layoffs for Paramount, and he's got to find $6 billion in savings for the new business. Now, he says he's going to do that without making layoffs. I think you and I have been around long enough to know that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
There will be, and there, of course, there should be, because there are going to be a lot of people who are doing the same jobs at those two businesses. But yeah, there'll be layoffs. It'll be depressing for a little while until the ship can steady.
Yeah. So now you're executive editor now. Does that mean that you still do the late night shows beat, or have you given that to somebody else now?
No, I haven't. Yeah, it's a pretty silly title, really, as Americans are wont to do. What do I cover? I mean, I cover all of television. My boss, Nelly Andreeva, knows the scripted TV business better than anyone else. So I realized there was no real point in trying to compete with her for the scoops on that side of things. So I lent into late night, which is having a really strange time, and I want to come back to that in a second. Do a lot of unscripted, cover a lot of the reality TV business. And the reality TV business, in fact, we just launched an event in LA about a month ago called the Deadline Reality TV Summit. And yes, it doesn't get quite the attention that the scripted world does. But when you think about some of the unscripted shows, The Voice is the thing that's, often propping NBC up. Love is Blind is one of Netflix's biggest shows. Mr. Beast's Beast Games is Amazon's, biggest. They say it's a big unscripted show. So it's probably just as big as some of their, white men with guns shows. So these are unscripted titles that really prop up a lot of these places. And I think unscripted is going to have a real place when it comes to YouTube. I just came from the upfronts in New York, and YouTube does their annual Brandcast. And it looked like an old school TV presentation. And there was one or two scripted things, but you know what it was? It looked a lot like cable of the olden days. It was unscripted formats. It was documentary series. They were cheaper to make, and they were being, 25-year-olds rather than 45-year-olds. But I think unscripted is where the initial rush in that YouTube world, in that, whatever we're going to call that, is going to come from. And whether a format or two can pop out of that is what I think people are going to be looking for.
Yeah. Definitely. Let's come on to talk about late night in a second. But yeah, it was really interesting to see you launch that unscripted event. And it's great. I love to see companies launching new events, because I know what goes into that. And but I thought that was a really interesting move, because obviously we've seen Real Screen and NatP, sadly fold, but which felt like a bit of a bellwether for the factual space in particular. But so what was the thinking behind that?
Well, I've been pitching this event for 18 months. It's funny, we announced our event the day that Real Screen announced that they were no longer, which I think a few people sort of saw the correlation. But in fact, firstly...
So that was purely by chance?
It genuinely was a coincidence.
Right, okay.
But I think we'd seen where things were going. And honestly, I hate Miami with a passion, and Real Screen's been in Miami for the last few years. So I figured if I can create an event where I don't have to go to a city of crypto, then I'd be happy. But the other thing or one of my main reasons for doing it was, there used to be the case the unscripted business was East Coast and West Coast. It was kind of 50-50 when I started writing about TV. And I would hazard a guess that it's probably now 80 to 90% on the West Coast. A lot of those production companies are based. And everyone was sort of saying, well, why are we flying all the way to Miami or New Orleans or these other places? Why don't we do something in LA? We've got better access to talent. We can get all of the top execs. One of the top things that we had at the Reality Summit was we had the unscripted buyers for all of the major platforms and broadcasters. So we had the Jeff Gaspin from Netflix, Jen Levy, who just got the job at Amazon, and we had Fox and NBC and CBS and ABC. And those 6 people were on a panel together for the first time. And it's really interesting to get those decision makers together. And I sort of figured we could do that if we do it in LA. And we had access to talent. As I said, we had Andy Cohen, who ironically is an East Coast talent, but happened to be in LA. And I knew that the people who are going to come to that event are based in LA. They don't need to spend too much time. It was a one-day event. In fact, we're doing a spin-off in London next week as part of South by Southwest, which is owned by PMC, which is the company that owns Deadline. So we're sort of seeing it as this brand that we can do in the UK. We can do bigger in the States. I know the plan for us is basically the first one we did was a bit of a pilot. We want to see if it works. Can we blow this out? Can we make it a bit bigger? And you know just better than anything, Justin, events are the future because, digital journalism doesn't necessarily make as much money as it used to.
No, no. Even with a circulation of what 22 million or something, I think Deadline has.
There's a couple of people that read us, yeah.
Yeah. So let's go back to late night then, and because there's been a huge amount of flux, and it seems like Donald Trump has had a hand to play in the change of the late night landscape.
He would like to think he has, and obviously the Late Show with Stephen Colbert ended last week, and I was covering that last show, and he'd been calling for Colbert's cancellation. He's been calling for Jimmy Kimmel's cancellation, and Seth Meyers. He hasn't quite touched Jimmy Fallon as much, or the Daily Show, but Daily Show's cable, so maybe he just watches broadcast TV. There was an interesting statement that CBS put out yesterday, because if you remember the timing of the Colbert cancellation, it was last summer, so they gave him quite a long amount of time to run into his last shows. It had come days after Stephen Colbert had said on his show that Paramount had paid a big fat bribe to the Trump administration. It was in relation to an interview on 60 Minutes, or the editing of an interview on 60 Minutes. And so, the conspiracy theories were like, that's why they've cancelled the show. David Ellison's come in. They want to make good with the Trump administration. They want to make good with Donald Trump himself. So if we cancel Colbert, that'll go some way to do it. I think two things can be true at once. I think that probably had some influence, even though CBS has said it's not. But the other thing is, it was clear that late night, and particularly on CBS, was costing a lot of money. In fact, CBS actually put out a statement yesterday that said they were losing $40 million a year to make that show. And that's a lot of money. And I don't necessarily think a late night show has to cost quite as much as maybe they were spending on it. But they basically decided to get rid of late night, because what was in its place now is a show with Byron Allen, but it's a ad buy. He pays for he's a time buy. He pays for the slot. He sells his own advertising. He can put whatever he wants on there. And they made the point that he's paying $15 million. So that's a $55 million swing from losing $40 million a year to making $15 million. And it was better for them. So I think two things could be true at once. I think there was some political pressure, but it's clear that late night, it just isn't what it was. Fewer people are staying up to watch it on television. Most people are watching it on YouTube the next day, and it costs a lot of money.
Yeah. And what's his next move then? I mean, other than, did I say he was writing some Lord of the Rings?
Well, he is a huge
movie?
Yeah, he is a huge Lord of the Rings fan, and he is writing a Lord of the Rings.
I mean, first of all, is he a writer? I mean,
he was, but long before he got into late night, even before the Colbert Report, he had written Strangers with Candy was a program that he had. I think Amy Sedaris was in that. Fact check me on that. But he is a writer, and he's one of the writers of his show. I think that's some fun. I mean, he clearly knows a lot about Lord of the Rings. But the interesting thing last week was he set up his own YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Now, there's only one video that he's put on it, and it was filmed the next day. It was almost like a public access TV show. It looked like a low budget version of his show. The slight difference was that he had Jeff Daniels and Eminem on it, which I'm sure if you're doing a cheap late night show, you can't do every night. But it was interesting that was his first move. Again, talking of late night, Trevor Noah, who used to host The Daily Show, is now considered quote unquote a creator, because he's doing a lot of work with YouTube. So I think that's an obvious place for these people to go. They clearly have an audience. They clearly have a lot of fans, and they can do it themselves. And they have a lot of money because traditional broadcasters have paid them a lot of money.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I think whether that's what Stephen Colbert does full time, who knows? But interesting that was his first move after leaving.
It feels like a logical move in the way that, I mean, Piers Morgan, again, he's almost created the blueprint there, hasn't he, really?
I'm sure Stephen Colbert would love to be compared to Piers
Morgan. So let's talk about other new developments in content then, that everybody's talking about right now. I'm sure, and I can see loads of deals being done in Hollywood. Is vertical video, and and so we've seen lots of deals being done. I mean, I guess the most notable one of the last, I mean, it's a little bit of a while ago now, but was Fox Entertainment investing in Holy Water. And
I could cut you off there because I don't buy it. I mean, I don't buy vertical video. Do you remember a few years ago we were all talking about NFTs funding television?
Yeah.
I can remember back when 3D television was going to be the
Yeah.
hot new thing. And, when was the last time we said that? I think vertical video will exist. I think, that we obviously a lot of people watch content on their phone, and that's not going to change. I think it's it's a very particular genre that's done well in this. You take out the China side of things, and
it's a very different business model in very different territories where you've got people paying tiny amounts, huge numbers of people paying tiny amounts who are perhaps don't have access to regular TV. They're just watching on their phones. Have a good Wi-Fi signal in the middle of China, rural
people are
China.
Always going to, even in the States, people are going to, on Instagram, yes, they might watch 30 seconds of my boyfriend killed my mistress, some 60-second microdrama. Is it going to be a real business that we're talking about in a few years? I very much doubt it. Now, I think what will be interesting is I think you'll see a lot of the likes of, Bravo just did this a few months ago. They announced a couple of shows. Netflix might do some stuff in that world. I just don't think it's going to be, it's not going to be these soapy titles. We haven't had an English language hit in the vertical space.
No.
And honestly, I think we won't be talking about this in 2 years.
Well, the question is it basically going to be content that's going to be focused on the social platforms that are featuring this, whether it's Instagram or TikTok, or whether there's a one app to rule them all? Obviously that's what sort of Netflix and Disney Plus is starting to lean into. They're making it available probably as a test, but
exactly, because they're trying to take on TikTok.
Yeah.
If you've noticed over the last few years, Netflix has been taking on YouTube very aggressively. You've seen what it's done in the sort of podcasting space, video podcasting space. They talk about YouTube all the time on their earning calls. Ted Sarandos calling YouTube a little bit of a farm league, which is ironic considering, he's actually taking the talent from YouTube to try and pay them more to go to Netflix. So I guess in that sense it is. I think the next one they'll try and take on is TikTok, because TikTok is clearly the place where most people watch these kind of vertical videos. Saying this as two men who don't watch a lot of TikTok.
Well, I don't know. I seem to doom scroll quite a fair bit, I have to say. But yeah, no, that's really interesting. I think, I tell you what I also thought was interesting. There was a deal a week or so ago by a company called Rosebery. Are you aware of what Rosebery?
No.
So Rosebery did a deal with A&E, all three, Banner J, Cineflix and Fremantle, to basically verticalize selected catalogue titles, and basically using AI to sort of chop that content down and make it more appropriate, suitable for vertical viewing. Sure. So that kind of makes sense because it's a low cost production pipeline of content that's already there and needs monetizing, and obviously all these businesses are like, let's feed into that, but how that gets monetized is still the question, isn't it?
Yeah, I can't wait to see Mayday in my Instagram For You page. Yeah, that's going to be really exciting. I think those deals have been going ever since, we've been in this business. Every few years, whatever new thing comes around, you get the big distributors who have these giant catalogs of content, and they figure out how to sell it again, whether that's selling it to subscription streaming or whether that, AVOD or now with this, they'll be flogging this stuff for forever. But it,
So you're calling it as a hoax, vertical video?
I wouldn't say a hoax, but I don't think we're going to be talking about it in a couple of years in this sense. No.
Yeah. Okay. And all right. Well, so what do you think is the biggest opportunity that, we've talked about the threats that's facing Hollywood and the US TV industry. What do you think the biggest opportunity is now, looking forward for, where's this growth going to come from, or is it purely a case of managed decline?
It's not managed decline. Make cool shit and make it cheaper. Simple as.
Right.
We're due a big hit, whether that's in scripted or unscripted. I don't think things have changed. I think, the ways we, perhaps watch things a little bit differently than we used to, but, make cool shit and make it a little bit cheaper than you used to.
So I know you probably don't think about the UK industry that much anymore.
Only when I'm winding you and our pals up.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, historically, the US industry's looked to the UK as a real hotbed of talent, production talent, but also on-screen talent, and we've seen that building over the last few years. But that feels to me that seems to be waning now. I mean, how is Hollywood? And I say Hollywood in that wider sense of US TV industry, but how is it viewing the UK industry right now?
It's funny you say it's waning, because obviously before I joined Deadline, I was at Broadcast, and largely my job was to try and figure out what British production companies and British talent was doing in the States. And now I'm looking at it from a slightly different perception, is they still care as much, and the UK is still that hotbed of talent and creativity, and Hollywood has absolutely recognized it. What's changed is they used to have to go to certain people to get it, and now they can go direct. Look at the number of, I mean, even just, in acting circles, British actors are widely considered, top of the heap. So that's fantastic. In terms of formats, there's fewer formats in the unscripted world that are necessarily coming out of. But that doesn't mean that those people aren't. There's so many. You look at the unscripted world in the States. ABC has a commissioner, the #2 unscripted commissioner, Gilly Pearce, is British. Fox just hired Sophie Leonard from Minnow Films, and she's a Brit. Rob Wade is the CEO of Fox, and he's a Brit who used to, work on the X Factor and shows like that. So there's, and they're still employed me. So, there's something about our accents and the way we do things is still very popular over there. I just don't think they necessarily need to go to production company X or production company Y to do it. Perhaps the talent, and particularly now in this sort of super independent world, I think that's it. But oh man, Americans still love coming over to London for a hunting trip. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah. And so what's next for you and Deadline then, Pete? What's the next or the rest of this year? We're almost halfway through 2026 already, but what's the back end of the year look like for you?
Oh, I couldn't possibly tell you what's happening anything more than a week away. But I think the thing for Deadline and the thing for me is we have to figure out. We still have a lot of people read our stories online. Now, we face the same challenges that some of the traditional broadcasters face, in that people are just reading it in slightly different places. We need to make sure we can monetize that. The fact that we're launching events like the Deadline Reality Summit, a company owned South by Southwest, it's clear that events, I think live entertainment is the thing that joins the publishing business and the television business, and I think people want to experience that. So I think we'll probably do more of that. But no, Deadline's job is basically to make sure that we tell you what's going on in the business before anybody else. And that won't change. The way we do it might change. We've got 3 or 4 social media managers now in a world where we didn't when I joined, because that's how a lot of people view our content and view our stories. So there'll be tweaks to that. But ultimately, yeah, you read Deadline because you want to know what's going on, and that bit of the job hasn't necessarily changed.
What do you make of the whole Married at First Sight scandal? Has that sort of made an impact in Hollywood? Are people aware of it?
I'm not sure they have. I'm not sure they are. I think, Married at First Sight was actually part of a huge deal at Peacock relatively recently, because it used to be on the A&E channels, and Peacock bought it from Kinetic Content. There hasn't been a huge amount of chat. I think this one is a very British problem, and they clearly need to get to the bottom of it. I haven't kept up to date with it, but from what my colleagues, Jake Cantor writing about it, and so forth, it looks. I mean, it doesn't look great, does it? I just don't think I don't think it's a problem inherent with the show. I think it's a problem inherent with the production, it seems. Yeah. So that problem hasn't quite got. I mean, that format goes around the world, so I don't think it's just the US that would be keeping an eye on that. It's it's a very British scandal, I think.
Yeah, for an Australian show, right, as well. So
it's a Scandinavian show, but
is it?
It is a Scandinavian format. I think it came from Snowman, which was the production company, but it was the Australian version, which was a bit sexier, a bit faster, that seems to have basically influenced
That
the
was
UK.
a hit through COVID, wasn't it,
Yeah,
in the UK? And
yeah.
that then sparked the commission in the UK. Yeah.
Exactly, and I think that's it. But I think the format, I can't remember exactly which of the Scandinavian countries it came out of. But yeah, the Australian version was the thing that supercharged it.
Yeah.
We'll see in the States whether it's a hit on Peacock, because Peacock's had a lot of success with Love Island. It took them 6 seasons. It's the only show in America I can remember that it took them 6 seasons to become a hit, because mostly if a show isn't a hit after seasons 1 or 2, it's done.
Yeah. Or episode one
Or
or two.
episode one
cases.
or two, yeah, exactly. Well, in streaming now, season 2 is basically like episode 2. But so yeah, we'll see if it has any knock-on impact. I suspect it won't.
Right. Well, now it's time for, I'm looking forward to this, for your story of the week, Pete.
Well, we sort of touched on it a little bit. And in fact, we're talking of late night, given that Stephen Colbert, was just kicked off the air last Thursday. But I was going to take this into a digital space, Justin.
Good.
I know you like, as I said, I came out of the upfronts last week, or the week before, sorry. And there was a couple of people doing some interesting things. There was a kid, I was going to call him a guy. I mean, I think he's 20 years old. His name is Julian Shapiro Barnum. And he's launching a show called Outside Tonight. And it is essentially The Tonight Show. It's filmed outside. It's filmed in New York. But it's got all the bells and whistles of a late night show. There's music, there's comedy, there's variety, there's chat, and there's interviews. And he is doing this at, I couldn't even tell you how much cheaper than The Tonight Show. But it will be interesting to see whether people connect with that, because there's no real difference as to what he's doing as to what the traditional broadcasters are doing. And I think that will really open the door. I mean, we've seen interview shows, there's a million interview shows on YouTube. But I think the thing with late night is it's not just an interview show. It's all of the rest of it. It's the comedy aspect. It's the band at the end of the episode. And it's getting those A-listers on that you don't necessarily see. So I'll be very curious as to see how Julian Shapiro Barnum does, and Outside Tonight. And there's one or two others. There's a guy called Ben Glebe who he claims he's launching the first late night show on YouTube. I think he's beaten Julian by a few days. But post Colbert, and we will get to a point, Jimmy Kimmel's been threatening to retire for years now, and Fallon and Seth Meyers, their contract comes up in 2028. So there will be a new generation doing this, and they probably will have never heard of Johnny Carson. They'll probably never even heard of David Letterman or Conan O'Brien to some extent. But I think YouTube and social will be where some of these late night type shows go in the future.
Yeah, that's going to be exciting to see. How about your hero of the week?
Well, we sort of touched on it. I've got a couple. I was gonna use a movie one. Admittedly, this is TellyCast, but I think I was gonna make the point of Kane Parsons, who is the director of Backrooms, because he comes out of this, creepypasta YouTube world, and by all accounts, this movie is going to do incredibly well. It's going to be A24's biggest film, and I think that the talent that are focusing on making stuff like this, and I'll give you another. There's a guy called Kareem Rama, who many people will have seen. He does Subway Takes.
Yeah.
And he did Subway Takes as a TikTok series to start with, because he realized that no one was doing TikTok shows. And his new show is a show called Keep the Meter Running, which he has done, on YouTube. And I think what will be really fun to see is, so he was in development for quite a while, just under a year at CNN with this show, because Keep the Meter Running is somewhat of a traditional travelogue. He gets in the back of a taxi, tells the taxi driver to keep the meter running and go wherever you want, and he talks with the taxi driver about the heritage and about history and other things. And he decided to get rid of the CNN development to just do it himself and do it on YouTube. And if that can be a hit, I think there'll be a lot of people who are thinking, well, why do I need to do this with a traditional broadcaster? Why do I need to go to a CNN or go to a cable network or even a streaming service, a Netflix and Amazon? Because I can just control this. I can own this myself. I can do whatever I want. There's no rules on length of episodes.
And then I can license it.
And I think, the success of something like Backrooms will be fascinating in the theatrical world, and I think Keep the Meter Running and Kareem Rama, if that pops you, because he's not young, he's closer to my age than he is Kane Parsons' age. So I think that the idea of new talent these are opportunities for these platforms, and they're not really doing anything. They don't really have to do anything. YouTube, the criticism of YouTube, if you want, and I put this to Neil Mohan, the CEO, last week. I interviewed him, and I said, you don't have to do much because people are uploading this themselves, and if it's a hit, you take credit for it. Now, they will argue that what they are doing is the technology and the tech side of things, which, as anyone who's used YouTube knows, it is a pretty seamless experience. Yeah. But they aren't investing. They're long gone are the days of YouTube originals. They're just the home for these places, and they get the reflected glory.
Yeah. Yeah, and they get about half the
55. Yeah, well, 45% of the revenue, 55% going. And I said to Neil Mohan, could a company come along and say, we're going to do a 75-25 deal, and all those people will go? And he seemed pretty chill about it. And the reason he's pretty chill about it is he knows it's the biggest streaming service in the world. It is the biggest streaming service in the US. Netflix is desperate to be as big and have as the engagement numbers that YouTube does. So I can't see it going away.
No, absolutely not. And you can imagine why Netflix are worried. I mean, this is the attention war now, isn't it? And it's all about attention, and YouTube's free, and it's in everybody's front room now.
Yeah,
not everybody's, but it's getting there. And who or what are you telling to get in the bin?
I'm putting Spencer Pratt in the bin. I've come straight from LA, where I voted. I posted my ballot just before I left, and this is for, in this instance, the mayoral race. And I will not say Karen Bass is doing a wonderful job as mayor, and not to get too political about it, but Spencer Pratt is very much his namesake. He's basically a man who used to be very famous during the Hills. He seemed to spend all his money a few years ago because he thought the world was ending as part of the Mayan apocalypse. It turned out it didn't end, so now he needs to find more money and more popularity. And he's running a MAGA campaign. Whether he is as right-wing as the branch of the Republicans, who knows? But he's really not doing LA any favors, because it just makes us look daft that this guy is second in the polls, and he's quite frankly an idiot.
Right. Okay.
So get in the bin, Spencer Pratt.
Okay, he's in the bin. Before I let you go, I'm going to ask you about SNL UK. Obviously had how many episode run? I think was it 8 in the end? I think it was 8 or 10. I can't quite remember. How's Hollywood viewing that? In terms of, because obviously in the end, relatively small viewing figures on linear, but obviously did pretty well on socials. But, is that being perceived as a success?
I don't think anyone in Hollywood knows there is a UK version of Saturday Night Live. Having said that, as a Brit who lives in LA, who really did not think SNL UK would work, I was very skeptical, because SNL is a very strange beast. I don't watch it on linear because it actually does air on Peacock. But what I do is much like everyone else, is I watch those clips. And because we are behind in terms of the time zone, on a Saturday evening, I can throw up YouTube and it will give me some clips. And I tell you what, I can still hum that pub song that they did a few weeks ago. And I think the thing that's done very well is the talent that's coming out of SNL. Now, here's the thing where I think Hollywood may start paying attention. There are clearly some very funny people on that cast. And I think what Hollywood will be paying attention to is if any of those break out, because we all know that SNL is over the years has been this place for talent to emerge out of and then become movie stars, and it has happened less than it used to.
Yeah.
But I think whether the British version can achieve something similar, I know some of the people on the SNL UK were slightly better known than perhaps new cast on the US version, but I thought it was very funny. And I wish them all the best. In fact, the guy who's essentially the showrunner, James Longman, used to be one of the executive producers of The Late Late Show with James Corden. So it has a little bit of that as well. And I know Lorne Michaels and Tina Fey and people like that spent a lot of time in London to get it right. So yeah, while America might not be talking about it, I think they might be in future. I think there'll be some interesting things to come out of it.
Yeah, well, there's a second season of that on the way as well, isn't there? Pete, thank you for joining me. 5 years after the first appearance on TellyCast? 5.5
years later. So no, it's a pleasure, Justin, and it's so I'm really pleased to see how how you're doing, because I know this was a labour of love when you started it, and it seems to have gone from strength to strength. So well done, mate.
Thanks, mate. Thank you. And should we go for a beer?
We should go for a beer.
All right, let's do that. Well, that's about it for this week's TellyCast. Thanks very much for Pete White from Deadline for joining me. TellyCast was produced by Spirit Studios and recorded in London. We'll be back next week with another show. Until then, stay safe.